This is CTO Insights, a podcast on engineering leadership. I'm Katerina, your host, and I will be bringing you insights from senior engineering leaders and experts in creating a culture of high performance. Today, I have the pleasure to host Mite Mitreski, CTO of Signicat, the leading provider of digital identity solutions in Europe. Signicat is on a mission to bring trust in the digital world. Companies use them to onboard customers, sign agreements, manage user logins, and automate identity workflows, all while fighting fraud and staying compliant across multiple markets. Prior to Signicat, Mite has been an engineering director and part of the CTO office at Klarna. He brings extensive experience in engineering leadership and great insights in high-performing teams. During our conversation, we explored the team structure and work processes at Signicat, how their deployment and QA process foster their team performance, and how they balance between prioritizing tech debt, operations, and new features. Since the success of Signicat as a product highly depends on teams integrating it within their platforms, their developers community is central to what they do. Mita talks about the importance of open sourcing their SDKs and enabling connection with developers through community forums. We also touch on all of the learnings that come from developing APIs for public use and how incorporating that internally can benefit your team. This episode is brought to you by Adiva, a global talent network that I founded back in 2014 that connects the world's best companies with the world's best tech talent. At Adiva, we provide access to a global network of top-tier tech and product talent ready to hit the ground running. With the ability to introduce a candidate within 24 hours and an exceptional 98% success rate on trial engagements, Adiva offers the flexibility for companies to scale their teams up or down as needed. If you're looking to expand your team, drive momentum in new projects, or need to backfill a role, Adiva might just be the solution you need. Visit adivait.com to get started. Mite, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
Let's start with a quick introduction and background for yourself so we can dive into the conversation. Just tell me who you are and what's your current role.
Yeah, so my name is Mite. I'm originally from Macedonia. Studied quite a bit of computer science, very heavy engineering background, still engineer by heart, even though with various leadership roles over the past 9-10 years. Well, I was in Macedonia. I was working for various consultancy companies, assisting the various e-commerce and banking players across Europe. And the last 9 years, I've moved to Sweden, where I spent most of that time at Klarna. And the last 2 years, I'm working for a company called Signicat as a CTO and engineering leader in the kind of global organization we have across Europe and slightly branching into other countries outside of Europe as well now.
Let's start with a quick overview of what's your team structure and work processes. How does a day-to-day look at your organization right now?
Yeah, I think we've kind of modeled a variation of tribe structure that it's kind of our own flavor of such tribe structure. So we have primarily it's myself and the chief product officer being the partners that driving the kind of what would normally be called R&D organization. We have several tribes that are have they dedicated tribe leaders, and within that tribe leaders there is various teams each team has its own product owner, and each team has a tech lead on that sense. So that's kind of the organizational setup on the kind of agile hierarchy. Parallel to the agile hierarchy, we also have a line management hierarchy, which is who is the person's manager. So there are cases where a line manager has several people across different teams, and the line manager responsibilities are primarily focused around the engineer's personal development the goal setting of that, like salary and performance reviews, as well as any other kind of typical kind of, let's say, people management aspects and personal development aspects. The reason why we kind of, I mean, obviously there's many reasons like on separation, but I would say we also wanted to make sure we have like a local representative. So the line management usually leads to someone in the local site on it where practically possible. And the organization right now, it's about 190, 200 engineers, depending on if you count some of our consultant helps. But overall, it's spread across several different sites. So I myself am based in Stockholm, but like a lot of our engineers are based in Trondheim, in Bergen, in Oslo, Rotterdam, Madrid, Lisbon in Portugal. We have Bucharest, we have Vilnius, Lithuania, and we have several smaller sites like with handful of folks like in London and like several other locations where it's like maybe a specific team or specific business case. So generally, like the line management organization is following like someone in the local site.
So that means that most of the teams are located, like co-located, and potentially share an office. Do you have teams across locations, or just
Yes. So
specifically?
yeah, so I mean, we have this kind of goal to make sure that the specific team is like based to up to 2 locations. I mean, we have specific cases where we have teams maybe that have like 3 locations or more, but like for practical reasons, like you want the teams to still meet occasionally in person. Like we do have like a hybrid way of working, so some days in the office, many days in remote. I think it's a combination depending on like the different sites and different teams. But for the most part, it's like I think it's a hybrid setup with like at least 2 sites per team. We
Okay.
rarely have like teams that is just in one location. That is the case, but it's very kind of it's the exception rather than than the rule.
Okay. And when it comes to the work organization within the team, do you follow specific methodology across the board, or does every team have the autonomy to do whatever they feel is right?
I mean, I think we drive a lot of the effort to be on autonomy based. So a lot of the teams can build their own like processes and ways of working. That's it. Like on high level, we have certain guidelines in the company. So what we've tried to standardize is a lot more on like the road mapping processes. So, for example, we have certain structure of how we kind of track the different tickets that the teams have, like that we allocate a certain percentage on tech debt. So we have internal ambition to like make sure around roughly 20% of the time is spent on like managing tech debt. X amount percent is managing on operations, and like to aim like to have at least 50% like on purely new development rather than like just maintenance and operation. So overall, like this is the guideline on that. Then, if you look at in practice, the team are actually using a variation of either Scrum or Kanban, but from more heavy towards like the Scrum setup, with the caveat that we do daily releases in the most like efficient teams rather than like following some kind of strict end of sprint guidelines. So generally that's the directional bit. I think we're still in the journey of getting to like daily sprints in the different parts of the company, but I would say for the most part, like a large chunk of the company, as well as like most of the new developments and newer projects are actually more and more like on a multiple times per day and like kind of proper continuous delivery setups.
And how does that work, like the daily deliveries with the traditional Scrum? How is what's your approach to modifying everything to work together?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like we're not tying like end of the sprint to do a release process, but rather than like every day you can like whenever something is complete can go to production. Now, like the kind of 2 week or 3 week or 1 week sprints that like the different teams have, there I would say we kind of more standardizing around like, hey, we have like a planning session and like technical breakdown session. We have like a retro or like scoping like in the planning. So it's
Mm-hmm.
more about like road mapping what we will do in the next 2 weeks rather than like the side processes around.
Right.
I would say so. So I think it works most efficiently that way as well, like because it allows like a less risky changes to lead product to production. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, on a company level, we are actually like rolling out like a more DORA metrics in a standardized fashion, so to make sure we actually get like much more smaller changes being rolled out to production, and
Mm-hmm.
as well as like high quality of those changes, so to lead to like a lower amount of defects in production, and be quick at actually resolving the issues in production, because the teams largely have ownership of the production systems. That's the kind of general direction. Even if we have like a handful of teams that still maybe don't have like the full ownership of the production bed, but the goal is like every single team to land into that state where like they can fully on production, which is the case for the majority of the teams in the company right now.
Mm-hmm. And you have teams that are doing daily releases and ones that follow a more traditional approach that are still not, in this daily release setup. Do you have any strategy for gradually moving teams towards daily release, like doing it without affecting performance or without introducing too much of a change all of a sudden?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can't happen overnight. Like, it depends on the starting point, right? So we've had cases where teams maybe had like a heavy reliance on a dedicated operations team, and like had like a separate QA phase in the process. So we've tried to kind of blend that into the processes, so like the QA happens within the feature rollout. So
Mm-hmm.
rather than like being a separate deployment of a feature branch. But I think a lot of that is based on automation at the end, because a lot of these, if you don't have a high degree of automation with a high degree of test coverage and a high degree of like solid production metrics, you are really not able to like do many frequent
Mm-hmm.
releases without like creating a lot of like side issues. So I mean, deployment frequency, I would say, is like one big kind of internal metric that we are aiming to improve. Like how often does like a Signicat team deploy code to production? It reaches into the end customers with the
Mm-hmm.
game of having like multiple times per day. And right now I'd say it varies from like multiple times per day for a good portion of the teams to like we still have some teams maybe that they do like once every a month, or every few weeks in the worst case. But the vast majority, I would say, it's in the kind of elite, like multiple times per day,
Mm-hmm.
and we are kind of getting everyone on that bit. But a
That's
high degree of
great.
automation would be the main answer. Like, without like the high degree of
Mm-hmm.
automation, it's hard to like do how to do that.
And I'm guessing in the optimal teams, the teams that release multiple times per day, you don't have heavy manual QA, right?
Yeah, I mean, the even the ones that have like multiple times per day in certain use cases, unfortunately, we actually do need like manual QAing because of the industry we are in. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
to explain that a little bit. So we have certain products that they're actually designed to prevent like automation. So essentially, they are actually actively blocking automations because they are trying to prevent actively fraud and credential stuffing and similar attacks. So like I would say most of the things are actually like tested like in an automated fashion, but then handful of scenarios actually have to be gone through manually.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these are around like for example, we have a team that manages like deepfake detections and algorithms on computer vision for like deepfake detections. While they have like quite a bit of test suites on like the deepfake detection, they also like rely on like some manual scenarios to actually also validate the in additional steps. Same goes where
Right.
we are using a third party like applications that actively prevent like automation. like in an internal hackathon, actually, one of our teams that has like such service, like there is a service called Bank ID in Norway, that allows you to like log in at banks and public services, as well as like various like e-commerce stores. Um, that one has like an active prevention on automation, so you can't really like automate it with scripts, because then like it triggers the fraud policies and it blocks you, logs out the user, or it blocks
Mm-hmm.
the IP, or triggers another type of blocking. So they actually created like a small mini robot in one of the hackathons that actually has like a fake finger, and drags and tries to tries to log in like that. So that was, I would say, like a interesting anecdote. I don't think they are using
Oh,
that like in
cool.
the real tests on regular basis, but it was a nice fun experience.
But it was successful, right?
Yeah, very successful, and very entertaining. Like they soldered in like a small robot that does like the place to be a human with a finger, like touching a screen.
Wow. Well, if the Norway team listens to this, they will probably level up their security standards.
Yes.
Um, you mentioned about let's go back to the automation QA just for a bit, and then I want to talk about the split between tech debt and you mentioned operations and new features. But for the QA, is the automation part developer led, or do you have a dedicated automation QA team that does this?
So like the QAs are embedded inside the teams. So there might be like certain teams, like I mean, for the majority of the teams, it's like there is no distinction. I mean, we don't have a QA title per se. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have it's more of an additional role. So like a software engineer has like some more QA focus in specific teams
Right. Okay.
primarily. But we've been aiming to get the automation to the super high degree, so that we don't have that need. And I think that's the case for mass majority of this. So
Mm-hmm.
that said, like we do have a group that actually works on like leveling up overall quality across the company, whether that being like through like improvement on processes, or through mechanisms like getting better tooling and like better standards on that. So that is done through we have a team called operations management that helps in like leveling that standard. So like they have also other responsibilities outside of the QA, like in security and like reliability standards,
Mm-hmm.
but QA is one area where we are leveling up, like to have like more tools. To give an example, synthetic test in production. So we're using some tools to monitor with synthetic test in production to actually validate that that the functions are actually working in production, and they are called every X minutes,
Mm-hmm.
on regular intervals from different locations, and that allows us to have like more certainty, and that's something we are kind of making sure we have more and more such scenarios. So that comes like centrally, but then the actual development, actual QAing, actual quality assurance happens within the team.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In terms of the split between tech debt operations and new features for customers, do you split the teams depending on this? I mean, tech debt obviously everyone needs to handle it and dedicate time to it. But in terms of the operations and the new features, do you have dedicated teams that do one or the other, or is everything just going across the board?
I mean, right now we still have some teams that are dedicated on purely operations, I would say. With the aspirational goal is like they actually move away from that model. I
Mm-hmm.
would say the primary model we have in the company, which is like the vast majority of the teams, and it's the directional one, is like platform engineering. So in a sense, we have like a platform tribe that has several platform teams. The one is like our cloud operations team. Another ones are our Connect team, which handles like some of our OpenID Connect services, and then we have a team called Subsea, which is like a bit of cryptic name, but essentially they do all the kind of plumbing under the hood, under the sea, in a sense, right? So like a lot of the site services, like config managements, like monitoring, observability stacks for the whole company, they handle that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the approach we have taken. The operations themselves are also managed by the product teams. Now that's kind of not the case for all product teams, and that's something we are kind of rolling out slowly in a phased way. So like we need to make sure we have the right standards, we have enough team members that can be on call, we have enough like automation and monitoring, and also like the processes can be leveled up for a team to actually get that responsibility as well. So this is why when I
Mm-hmm.
say like majority of the teams are managing their own production, but not everyone is, because they haven't gotten to like that level of maturity in the tooling, because it's a journey, right? Like so a lot of the
Right.
automation and processes need to be kind of leveled up, but then also like there is requirement maybe some training, etc. But we have taken this like traditional like it's not necessarily not traditional, it's very new in that sense, but like platform engineering route, so kind of the next iteration post DevOps, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Talking about tooling and infrastructure, can you share a bit more insights around that? Like, how does that affect team performance? Any tips or advice you'd like to share based on your experience?
Tooling in what sense?
Like tools you use for optimizing processes, infrastructure, deployment pipelines.
Yep. Yeah, maybe I can kind of highlight some aspects on that. And so, I mean, generally, like we try to aim like on two levels. Like, so first, we want to make sure that the team has like autonomy as much as possible. So, like, they should be able to pick as much as possible from the tools. That said, we try to standardize and provide central tooling for the stuff that is glue between the teams. So, like, let's say Mite is in a team A and Katerina is in a team B. We need to kind of communicate with each other in some way, or like there is some kind of the services need to like send messages to like a queue. Like all of these site services, like the REST APIs, like that the people will use, like the queuing services, like the tools on that, we try to have them through standards. And that, like a lot of that comes from either architecture group, like that is actually trying to kind of standardize on that level, or it comes from like the platform. And on the
Mhm.
platform side, I would say like we've been trying to roll out much more common CI tools that like I mean, we are primarily users of GitLab in general. So like GitLab runners, GitLab pipelines, now, on top of that, we are trying to roll out CI tools to be able to like make sure we do like easy way to do canary releases for each of the teams, easy way to do like stage releases. So I think a lot of the tooling has been based on enabling such kind of supporting tools. I would say on the platform side, like we do a lot of like uh, heavy usage of the Grafana family of tools, Grafana Labs family of tools. So like Grafana itself, obviously, but Loki as well for the logs. And I'm horrible with the names, but we have like their tracing tooling as well from the Grafana Labs. So like we have big kind of that portfolio of tools, and I think that enables a lot of like the site supporting bit. I think a lot of the other side like comes from the monitoring, having like some synthetic tests and having good alerting capabilities. So those are kind of the sources of the alerts, and then those alerts get propagated to like an ops genie with on-call rotations from the team, and that gets handled like on per team basis, so it hits the right teams. And this allows, like as we are rolling out like more and more teams to be in a DevOps approach, while maybe the DevOps team still doesn't have the responsibilities for it, like those alerts, we're trying to redirect them to like the central teams, like the more ops oriented teams to handle like the main alerts, and then like over time we are shifting those alerts over to like the right teams.
Okay. Um, One question around developing for public use. So, like Signicat has integration options for developers to use it for whatever platforms they have and integrate with it. I'm curious if you've noticed some, and I believe Klarna had the same, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So you've been leading a lot of teams that work in this regard and providing services to external developers. Is there a difference in terms of how you develop code for outside use and internal use? And Are there any practices from it that any team can pick up and improve their own coding standards or processes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like different layers to this. So first, it starts with like the APIs. I would say, for the internal use cases, I think the APIs can be much more flexible and more agile in that sense. So like having breaking changes, while not nice, it's something that is not like a major event. On the public
Mm-hmm.
side, on the other hand, like breaking APIs, it's a no go. So like general policies, like we never do a backwards incompatible change. If that's absolutely unavoidable, we have like a super a structured processes to make sure that the customers get on board, and that usually becomes like a multi-month project, and sometimes is not, if not longer, to make sure we have like
Mm-hmm.
a breaking change. So this is why like having a lot of input on like API design, and specifically for the public APIs, and having a group that is dedicated, like a API public API forum or architecture forum, that actually handles the structure of that, to avoid like any kind of bad design issues, is like super important, much more so like than the internal cases. So that's kind of on the API level. um, then, as you say, like when you have like various developers using the tools, like often you want to provide SDKs for different use cases. So I would say like one big best practice is to make sure that those SDKs are open sourced. So both at Signicat but also at Klarna, we try to aim to make sure that the SDKs are open source on GitLab. The reason is a twofold. First is like that they are transparent, to like the ones using it. But secondarily, like the community might actually want to contribute or like propose a change on it, and it could be that they have like a particular bug that is very specific to them, and by providing the source, like that might be something that allows them to more easily debug, but also like it might be that it allows them to also fix a bug that you have in the SDK as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's super important to make sure that you have like actually public SDKs with a public Git repository that is also maintained and watched after. So like if people are commenting on that, that's very very important. I mean, we have at Signicat experimented, and like there hasn't been like a dramatic usage. I think their usage was maybe bigger like a few years before. But if you have a community forum, so like much like Stack Overflow, like we have a equivalent forum for us, for our
Mm-hmm.
customers, and then people can ask questions on that. I don't think it's been that much used the past period, because I think our documentation actually has leveled up like quite good. We are actually investing quite a lot to make sure we have like a good developer experience. So we have like dedicated tech writers that are actually improving constantly that documentation. When there's like I don't think they ever will be like perfect, but I think they are fairly solid nowadays. That we get a lot less of like those type of generic questions. I think most of the questions end up being around like business capabilities or like feature request, more than like specific like questions on like the integration itself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Have you ever had a case of a community member to initiate the development of an SDK and maybe lead the process, or is it mainly internal?
I think it's primarily internal. I think we have cases where like partners of ours have like created specific plugins, let's say
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce or Dynamics plugins for specific use cases. And some of those maybe have been leveled up, or we have jointly decided to invest in those. But I would say like not so much on the initiation side. I think maybe it's more like it comes a request, and then we try to
Mm-hmm.
cater for such requests on that. I think that's the case also with like it was the case to a large extent also with Klarna, where like certain partners maybe were jointly like incentivized to create specific plugins for Magento or WordPress or so on, and then they
Mm-hmm.
actually try to like run it on their own. But then I don't think there was like a lot of in-housing of the externalized projects. I think they still stayed as an external project
Right.
afterwards as well.
So, in terms of documentation for
Yeah.
internal use, how much of your processes and the code and everything is documented? And are people empowered to communicate asynchronously, or is most of the communication synchronous between the teams?
I mean, I would say it's a combination on synchronous asynchronous, but I would say for the actual like discoverability and finding like information, we have invested heavily in a tool called Backstage. It's a Spotify open source tool, so it allows us to create like a mapping of all of the components we have in the company, and all of those components can have like side metadata. So we have like the dependency hierarchy between the components, but also we have the links to the documentation for each of the projects. We have like links to the wiki that the team has. It will have links to like the API specs and like any SDKs or any other like code repository, for example. And we've tried to keep it open. So like the repos should be kept open across the company. So that allows like much more discoverability and like people to actually evaluate and research. So if you want to see like how has team X solved Y, I can go and open the repository very easily and find that
Mhm.
in the Signicat catalog of services. This also helps us quite a lot in the compliancy side because we are in the identity services. So that's kind of heavily regulated. So like a lot of our customers in the banking and insurance and public sector, and we have a lot of strong security requirements, but also strong like compliance regimes we need to cater for. And this allows like a lot of that discoverability, dependency chaining, like that all of that can be seen in one nice
Mhm. Okay.
nice place.
We talked a bit about tech debt and having dedicated time to do it like regularly. And you also mentioned using Dora metrics. First, the first question around developer experience, because I believe developer experience and understanding the big picture contributes much more for the performance of a team than, I don't know, following some artificial metrics to understand their productivity. Um, do you have any practices or tips for creating solid development standards, processes that can empower productivity on the long run? Also, navigating through tech debt, any particular rules for when is it okay versus not okay to leave tech debt and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think on high level, it's hard to kind of give a side guideline on that. But in general, the way we've been trying to cater for this is through this architecture group. So we have
Mm-hmm.
like a central architect, which is a separate dedicated role. So Rune does a terrific job on like gathering the different architects, but then the actual architects are actually sitting either with the teams or the individual tribes. So there is a
Mm-hmm.
like representation from the teams in that forum. So we want to try to get like more voices heard in the same forum, because if you have a central team that sits on the sidelines and comes up with like the guidelines, they will likely miss or make a lot of inefficiencies, and it will create a lot of both internal resistance, but
Mm-hmm.
also like it would lead to like worse decisions. So making sure you have like enough representation from all of the teams in a forum like that, I would say is like super important. So that's around like the kind of setting up the standards on like on the both the processes, but also like on APIs and other more significant like design decisions. Now, when it comes to like the management of tech debt, I would say like I mean, obviously, if you're just starting up in a greenfield environment, like the first couple of months, probably you're not going to have any bigger tech debt. It will take some time to accrue. I mean, my guideline generally always has been tech dip is a good, it's a good thing, right? It's something you
Like a
consciously
bank
should
loan.
take, right? So if you're consciously making a shortcut to, yeah, it's a bank loan, right? Like bank loans like are not bad, right? Like
Yeah.
they allow you to buy the house, but you need to repay that. Like you think about that, you need to repay that because after if you don't repay it over time, it will just explode and spiral out of control. I think a bank loan is actually a really great analogy on that, and I think that's the case with many teams. And I would say like um, that becomes a problem if it's left for a long period of time unattended on it and unmanaged. Then you
Mm.
have to like stop business and like do big cleanup efforts. And I'm never a favor of like, oh, we do like a cleanup sprint. Like you generally shouldn't have like a need to do a cleanup sprint. Like that should be always a percentage of the time that is spent on it. Then you don't necessarily gonna lead to like do like a major major cleaning phase. I would say also like there is another bit. I mean, maybe this is more specific to the Nordics, but like, I think it's probably the case across Europe. I think most of the Nordics actually ends up disappearing for vacation for the full of July. So generally, like it's a perfect time to also like reconsider some of these cleanup activities, like documentation activities, things where like there is not a lot of like demands from customers,
Mhm.
like the operation backlog is not big. So like any of these more strategic periods are best to take this time frame, or like in the Christmas period where there is a lot less maybe activity happening. So planning them for those time frames, even though like maybe again maybe the team is like more in a skeleton crew in a sense, right? Like maybe there is only 2 people from like the 8 people in the team available. But I think planning for them to like maybe not
Mhm.
do new developments in those phases is maybe a better time. But having like a dedicated period, like thinking like, and I mean, it doesn't have to be every sprint, right? Like you can take a like refocus and say like, okay, this coming sprint we are not gonna touch anything tech debt, but thinking that you need to do this on a regular, continuous basis to not land into scenarios where major cleanups are needed, and that's like very painful when you are in that situation. It's extremely painful for everyone. Like obviously the business leaders and like want to like get the best outcome. Like I mean, every team member wants to get the best outcome,
All
but
right.
then like you can't
And
because
when
of
you do
like
the
the debts
regular
of the past.
cleanup of the debt, do you focus on things that, so for example, right now you're working on a new feature and that touches some old code that needs to be improved or refactored? Do you focus on that only, or you also have dedicated, like for example, we intentionally left tech debt in the previous sprint. We know we need to tackle it, so we open a ticket for that, and that is part of the next 20% in the next sprint.
I mean, in one hand, like as you say, it's easiest to like go and like do whenever you're touching a new development in that area to kind of clean it up before building the new thing. I think that's like I would say that's definitely a good practice. That's and sometimes like you might need to do like a more structural change, right? And I mean, it's hard to argue maybe some of these things are not even a tech debt. I would say like maybe there are new functionality, but like if you have a system that needs to scale beyond the point of the original design, and it requires like major redesign. So like let's say you thought like at the time like RDS will be enough to handle like that particular workload, but now you for some reason need more of a caching layer, or you need like Redis or something else. Like that maybe is a bigger change, right? That's not necessarily some like a small cleanup you can do when you touch the new thing. I think having like some more conscious backlog of such like bigger things that are needed, I think it's actually important to have it on the back burner, and then like that maybe comes like a
Mm-hmm.
more than 20% a bit, like maybe we spend the next week only on that. But I think that they need to be much more conscious with like what are the risk and the value, like the bigger ones. But general case would be like when you touch something new, that's the best time, and then having some of these like more, let's step back. I think there is another factor in this. I think in the more kind of product oriented companies like ourselves and Klarna and various others on that end, I think when a lot of the feedback you get also from the operational of the systems, right? So when you have operational incidents, there is certain patterns and there are certain learnings from each of these incidents, and actually making sure that those learnings are incorporated. I think that also allows to make sure you meet the customer demands. I mean, some of that maybe is tech debt, some of it is maybe functionality, but overall, it's important that is also another forum where you can get input on
Mm-hmm.
what's the next. depth to
Great.
tackle in a sense, right?
Apart from the DORA metrics, do you use anything else, or you're mostly focused on the output?
I mean, those are I would say like are the main are the main factors. I think we are other stuff we are monitoring like cloud spend, like support tickets, like things like that on like a more I would say like the more technical nature. Then when it comes on the business one, I think they're like we are more focused on like specific metrics that are very product specific, like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, conversion rates and things like that that are more like very specific to that particular product. So there, I think we do like more optimizations on that level. Um, I think we have another kind of category of security metrics which are also quite important. So like make sure that we have like um, uh, vulnerabilities patched in a timely fashion. So like we don't have like a cron of uh, critical major vulnerabilities. We have a specific time frame to fix. So like the very critical ones need to be fixed within 24 hours, and
Mm-hmm.
others maybe like the lower criticality maybe like a couple of weeks, right? So like there is a different time frame on that that we have as a process. So I think there's quite a few on the security side that we are kind of monitoring on that. So like vulnerabilities is one, but then uh, percentage of offsite backups, like immutable backups, like
Mm-hmm.
disaster recovery testing. So a lot of like side activities. I think some of it is like due to our industry, but I think some of it is like just generally good, solid security practices that like
Right.
any more
And
sizable
in terms
company, I
of
would
the
say, has to follow.
team or individual performance, do you just replicate this on uh, measure this on team level to understand how the team is performing, or you have some other practices?
I mean, I would say that the team performance is a combination of like what it's more try to be following like the tribe and priority setting
Mm-hmm.
structure. I think the individual performance can come as a feedback from the PO to like the line manager, and then like then it can create a more
Right.
conversation if there is like improvement points or maybe there is like also positive bits that or like some rewards. I think that comes more from like that conversation. While like I don't
Mm.
see like the metrics being the driver for that. I don't
Yeah.
see like the Dora metrics being the driver on that because there is lots of context, right? Like maybe the team has started with like a is maintaining and running a very old product but is like still super mission critical, or maybe there is like they're working on completely new greenfield. Like I don't think that necessarily shows like the full picture if you look at
Yeah.
just purely like the number of releases, right? Because if it's a completely greenfield, like it would be surprised if they're not like doing multiple times per day. But if a team is managing a 15-year-old project and they do like
Mm.
two a week, I would say that's maybe probably a good thing as well. So like
Yeah.
it depends on. There's lots
I
of
love it
context
how
around that, right?
intuitive it is
Um,
for tech people to understand that metrics are not working as well in this field. And for managers, they always want to, put their head around it and find a way to measure individual performance or measure team performance or do something with the data.
yeah, I think the metrics like are useful as an indication, but they
Yeah.
they cannot be the main guidance, right? Like you can't really like and the moment like you start like using them for performance
Yeah.
directly like that, that's the moment they start to be gamed, because majority of the ones that are used in this like are easily gameable like on that level. They're good to see as
Hmm.
trends. They're good to see as like within the team. Some of these, some are more across the company. It shows like a company health or focus areas. It gives like it helps you kind of picking what to prioritize as well. But measuring them on the individual level on that end, I think it's super hard. I think lot of the focus should be more on like what's the business value overall from the team, like what's the like what's the impact on the company overall, rather than like
Right.
looking at like lines of
Talking
code or
about
things like that.
scaling, you mentioned at the beginning that you have a team of around 200 and also some consultants that work with you. Do you have any way to, like a formula to balance out what goes to consultants, what goes internally, or are consultants deeply integrated within the teams? How do you manage this usually?
I mean, generally for us, it's like we there are several categories, but I would say on the consultant side, like we either have brought in like specialty skills that we don't have in house, or we have specialty skills that are maybe
Mm-hmm.
not something we want to kind of develop them in house. So to give an example, we have help around like dynamics and like ERP systems that work with us.
Right.
We are not an ERP company. It does not make sense for us to kind of build like a big group that manages that in house. And to be honest, like you really can't even build like I'm not gonna have like a
Mm.
investment budget to create like a 5-person team that can like sustainably like develop something like that. So it doesn't make sense for us to do that. We use an external party. Same has been in some like bigger initiatives. Then the other side has been more if we have a specialist area where we want to do a major leap and then we want to move it faster. So to get like someone that is maybe expert in a specific area. So we went through like this data, like leveling up our data engineering and data practices, like making a Signicat a more data oriented organization. So we brought in some external help to like help us like speed up that journey and work with us together to kind of to move faster.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have like in-house that, and like we have taken over the bets, and we are kind of going with a fast pace on that end. And then the other cases are maybe like a temporary help in specific areas, like where maybe there is some kind of seasonal help, like there is a particular project,
Right.
but it's not like a long-term investment. So like maybe want to keep someone for 6 months, 12 months, for a
Mm.
particular area. So I think that those are kind of the categories I would say like most use cases for us that
Right.
that uh, that that
In
have
terms of
been
scaling
um,
the internal team, the market is picking up right now. A lot of companies started hiring more. What's the approach when it comes to first like screening people and ensuring retention? A lot of times technical skills are easy to assess, but then when the person joins, there are challenges. There are some turnovers as well. Do you have any particular practices around that in terms of the process
yeah.
for hiring and also onboarding new people to make sure they're set up for success?
Yeah, I mean, on the kind of hiring side, I think it's about positive, but it can be also like a challenge as well. But for us, it's like very like the positive aspect on the hiring bit is like we have so many different sites, like so we can find talent if folks are
Mm,
not available in Oslo, we can try to find them in Lisbon, or we can try to find them in Rotterdam, and we have like a wider network on that. I mean, obviously, we want to constrain it around the team and so on. So like that sometimes makes it like a little bit harder, but like overall, like we have a wide network. So if we want to start a completely new team, we have so many different locations, where we could find a specific area. So that kind of enables us to open like in different sites. So that's maybe like a large part of that. Then on the standards on that, I would say like we're still in the process of like actually like standardizing a lot of the site beds, but we have like certain like common leadership questions and standards on that end, and then we have a common processes that like myself am involved with together with like our talent acquisition team to jointly like evaluate the profiles. So like we aim that the teams themselves that are hiring are involved in the process at Signicat, because we are
mhm,
again, even though it's 200, we're not that big where we that's not possible. So we if the target team is X, we want to make sure that the team is involved there. But then we also try to put some check marks to make sure that the standard is common
mhm,
for the whole company. So that's on the kind of evaluation. When it comes to like once they join in, we do have like a nice little onboarding checklist that our HR team has prepared, which we are using on that end, that we actually get like the team introduced to different parts of the company. I think a lot of that onboarding actually again happens on the team level. So in a sense, like we still haven't like maybe been able to get like a tons of like central support on that, but I would say um, like the high level bits are like captured in the that onboarding checklist, but then like the individual context on getting people up to speed happens
Mm-hmm. And
the
is
team
it
and
mostly hands-on, or they have
office that they are
dedicated
in.
time to understand
Um,
and read through documentation and stuff?
No, I mean they join a team. They work with that team. Like there is
Mm-hmm.
onboarding phases for that. We do like some various like lecture bits in specific areas. For example, our internal platform, we do various like training sessions. There's pre-recorded training sessions as well on that end.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the bet is on that. I mean, obviously we're not expecting that someone joins and like they hit the ground running, but um,
Right.
lot of that is like handled by the individual teams. The difference is, I think, in Signicat is like we have maybe much more diverse technology background due to like the general history of the company. So we have like teams that are developing things in PHP. We have teams that are developing things in Java. We have a .NET teams,
Mm-hmm.
and we have some TypeScript teams, for example. And all of these like there is not a lot of common central help that you can do on that level. So a lot of the central help is around like the common platform, the common developer tooling, developer processes, um, cloud environment. So a lot of the help is
Mm-hmm.
on that level rather than like in the individual bits. And then the rest is like
Okay.
handled by the
Okay.
individual team that that person joins in.
We covered a lot. How do you want to wrap this up? Any final thoughts?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think one bigger note to say, like, since like a lot of the focus was around productivity and like having high performance teams, I think like one important thing to note is like having a common purpose for the teams. I think it's important that like the individual teams has like this shared goals and like a very clear vision that they are aiming at. And I think the other aspect I just want to highlight that is also super important is having like a high degree of trust and like open communication, like being approachable and that everyone can approach all the leaders. And that's something like I strongly believe in. Like I don't. I think anyone should be able to reach out to any of the C-level folks in a company and other way around. Like I don't think there should be like
Mm.
if I want to talk with the engineer, I don't need to go through their manager or the other way around. Like I believe that I should be approachable, and I think that's the case like for our whole leadership team as well. And I think that's a common bit that we should make sure we have it like open and safe communications available in the company. So that's a important
That's
bit
an excellent way to
that
wrap
I would
this
like
up.
to add as well.
Thank you, Mite, once again for being my guest. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope others will too.
Thank you as well.